The galaxy was vast, filled with empires that had ruled for thousands of years. The strongest among them was the Galactic Dominion, a ruthless empire that controlled over 1,000 worlds. They had conquered countless species, crushed countless rebellions, and never feared any enemy. But one day they received a strange signal. It came from a small, unknown planet on the edge of the galaxy. The message was peaceful, simple. We are humanity. We come in peace. The Dominion's High Council watched the message with amusement. Another weak species, another planet to conquer. They had seen this many times before, and every time it ended the same way. The weak bowed, the strong ruled. Admiral Zorgzan, the Dominion's most feared warlord, leaned back in his throne. His reptilian eyes gleamed with confidence. "Humans," he muttered. "Let's show them who rules this galaxy." He sent a fleet to the small human colony called New Terra, one of Earth's first settlements beyond their solar system. The Dominion expected an easy victory. They had wiped out species far more advanced than these so-called humans. But this time, things did not go as planned. New Terra was a beautiful planet, full of green forests and blue oceans. The human settlers had worked hard to build cities, farms, and technology. They had no weapons, no army, only scientists, engineers, and families hoping for a new life. Then, one morning, the sky turned black. The people of New Terra looked up in horror as hundreds of massive warships appeared. Their silver hulls reflected the sunlight, covering the sky like storm clouds. The ground trembled as the ships descended, blocking out the sun. A deep, cold voice echoed across the planet. "People of Earth, you have one choice. Kneel or burn." It was Admiral Zorgzan. His fleet hovered above, ready to destroy everything. The Dominion had given humanity a chance to surrender. If they refused, they would be wiped out, just like every other species before them. For a moment, there was only silence. The humans stood frozen, staring at the sky. Fear filled their hearts. They had never faced an enemy like this before. And then a single voice responded, "We do not kneel." The message came from Commander Ethan Carter, leader of New Terra's defense team. His voice was calm but firm. Zorgzan laughed. "Foolish," he muttered. "They will learn." Then he gave the order. Attack. Fire rained from the sky. The Dominion ships opened fire, sending blazing red energy beams down upon the cities. Explosions rocked the planet. Buildings collapsed. Smoke and fire filled the air. The people of New Terra ran for their lives. Parents grabbed their children. Alarms screamed across the settlements. The peaceful colony had never prepared for war. But humanity had one advantage. They adapted quickly. Commander Carter and his team acted fast. They hacked into the colony's satellites and redirected them to fire back at the Dominion ships. Weak weapons, but enough to cause confusion. Underground bunkers opened, sheltering as many people as possible. Small ships took off, dodging enemy fire. The humans were not soldiers, but they refused to die without a fight. For the first time in history, a species resisted the Dominion's first attack. Zorgzan watched from his flagship, his amusement turning to annoyance. These humans were supposed to be weak. They should have fallen within minutes, but they were still fighting. And then, something happened that had never happened before. A Dominion warship exploded. One of the smaller human ships had crashed into a Dominion warship, a suicide attack. The explosion sent debris flying. More human ships followed. They had no weapons powerful enough to destroy the enemy fleet, but they used their speed, their knowledge, and their desperation. They hacked the enemy systems. They jammed communication signals. They sacrificed themselves to take down larger ships. The battle that was supposed to last 5 minutes stretched into hours. For the first time in Dominion history, a newly discovered species did not fall immediately. Zorgzan clenched his fists. His fleet was still winning, but it was taking too long. The High Council was watching. If he failed to crush the humans quickly, it would be seen as weakness, and weakness was unacceptable. So he made a decision. Destroy everything, he ordered. Burn the planet to the ground. The Dominion warships charged their cannons for a final devastating strike. The humans had fought bravely, but there was no escaping the power of an empire. Commander Carter sent one last message to Earth. We did not surrender. We stood. Now you must fight. Then the sky erupted. A beam of pure energy shot down from the Dominion's mothership, hitting the planet's surface with the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. The ground cracked. Oceans boiled. Cities turned to ash. New Terra was gone. Zorgzan watched in satisfaction. It was over. The humans had been taught their place. Or so he thought. Because at that very moment, across the galaxy, Earth received the message. And when humanity heard what had happened, they did not mourn. They did not run. They did not kneel. They prepared for war. The Galactic Dominion had crushed New Terra, leaving behind nothing but ashes floating in space. Admiral Zorgzan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction with satisfaction. Another species had been put in its place. Another world had burned beneath the might of the Dominion. But deep inside, something felt off. The battle should have been over in minutes. Humanity should have surrendered, begged for mercy. Yet they had resisted. They had fought back in ways that no species ever had. They had adapted, sacrificed, and even managed to destroy a Dominion warship. No primitive race had ever done that. A low growl escaped Zorgzan's throat. It didn't matter. The humans were weak. Their colony was gone. Their homeworld would soon follow. Yet, across the vastness of space, on a blue planet called Earth, something was happening. Something that had never happened in the history of the Dominion. A species had declared war. Earth's top leaders stood in a secret underground base, watching the final moments of New Terra. The transmission from Commander Ethan Carter had been broadcasted across every screen. The people of Earth had seen the flames. They had heard his last words. We did not surrender. We stood. Now you must fight. There was no debate. No hesitation. For centuries, humanity had fought wars among themselves. They had been divided by borders, ideologies, and power struggles. But at that moment, the entire planet became one. Scientists, engineers, military commanders, and leaders from every nation gathered. They studied the Dominion's weapons, their technology, their attack patterns. They had no illusions. Humanity was outmatched. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Their ships were larger, their weapons more advanced, their armies endless. Humanity was barely beginning to explore space. But there was one thing the Dominion had underestimated: humanity's ability to adapt. Every major nation dedicated its resources to the war effort. Factories that once built cars and planes now produced warships. AI systems calculated enemy movements. Every scientist, soldier, and strategist worked toward one goal: survival. There was no time to develop advanced weapons, no time to build a massive fleet. The Dominion was too strong. So, humanity did something no empire would ever expect. They changed the rules of war. Instead of fighting the Dominion in space, where they were weaker, they would bring the war to the ground. They would force the enemy into close combat, where brute force mattered less and strategy, deception, and unpredictability mattered more. They built massive EMP cannons to disrupt Dominion shields. They designed cyber attacks that could disable enemy warships from light years away. They developed new forms of guerrilla warfare, using old tricks in new ways. But their most dangerous weapon was something far simpler. They weaponized their own deaths. Every human knew they were fighting a hopeless war. Every soldier who signed up understood the cost. But they also knew that if they could make the Dominion bleed, if they could show the galaxy that the enemy was not invincible, others would rise. And that was the Dominion's greatest fear. 3 months after New Terra's destruction, the Dominion sent a fleet to finish what they had started. They had detected human activity in the Epsilon 3 system, a small outpost in deep space. Admiral Zor-Egzan saw this as an opportunity to make an example of humanity. He wanted to crush them once and for all, to send a message that no one defied the Dominion. So, he sent 200 warships. It was supposed to be an easy victory. Instead, it became a massacre. The moment the Dominion fleet entered the system, their ships began to malfunction. Their targeting systems failed. Their shields flickered. Communications were jammed. It was an ambush. Human ships, barely a fraction of the Dominion size, appeared from the asteroid belt. They were smaller, faster, unpredictable. Instead of firing energy weapons, they launched electromagnetic bombs, disabling the Dominion's defenses. And then the real attack began. Dozens of human fighters crashed into Dominion warships, turning themselves into missiles. Cyborg soldiers, engineered for zero-gravity combat, boarded the enemy ships and took them from the inside. The Dominion had expected a battle of strength. They got a war of madness. By the time the smoke cleared, half the Dominion fleet had been destroyed. Admiral Zor-Egzan watched in horror as the survivors limped back to the flagship. His empire had never suffered such a loss. Not to an advanced species, not to a rebellion, but to humans. This wasn't just resistance. This was a message. We are not prey. We are the storm. And for the first time in his long, blood-stained career, Zor-Egzan felt something new. Fear. The silence on the Dominion flagship was suffocating. Admiral Zor-Egzan stood frozen, staring at the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned a battle into a bloodbath, and the blood was Dominion blue. This was not how wars were fought. For centuries, the Dominion had crushed planets with sheer power. They would arrive in orbit, demand surrender, and if the enemy refused, they would rain destruction from the skies. There was order to war, but humanity had thrown that order into chaos. They fought with no concern for their own survival. They didn't just resist. They attacked. They sacrificed. They adapted. And now, the Dominion had a problem. A very big problem. Word of the ambush at Epsilon 3 spread like wildfire. The Dominion tried to suppress it, but they couldn't stop the whispers. For the first time, the galaxy was watching humanity. The Dominion's enemies, dozens of weaker species that had been crushed under their rule, began to take notice. Some laughed, calling it a fluke. Others whispered that perhaps the humans were more dangerous than they seemed. And then there were those who had nothing left to lose. Rebellions that had been crushed began stirring. Underground movements started communicating again. The Dominion's iron grip had never loosened, until now. One battle. That's all it took. One battle had cracked the illusion of Dominion invincibility. And the humans weren't finished. Back on Earth, the response was swift. Humanity knew what was coming. The Dominion would not take this loss lightly. The next wave wouldn't be just a fleet. It would be an extermination force. There would be no peace talks, no negotiations. So, humanity did what it had always done. They prepared. The greatest military minds gathered in underground war rooms. Scientists worked day and night, pushing the limits of physics and technology. Factories ran without rest, building weapons not to defend, but to strike. There was no talk of surrender. Instead, they made a decision that no species had ever dared before. They would take the war to the Dominion's doorstep. The plan was madness. Humanity didn't have the numbers, the ships, or the firepower, but they had something more dangerous. They had imagination. The Dominion fought by the book. Humanity. They tore the book apart. They didn't just build warships. They created ghost ships, vessels rigged with AI and explosives, designed to infiltrate enemy fleets and self-destruct. They didn't just train soldiers. They engineered cybernetic warriors, faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Dominion had ever faced. They didn't just fight battles. They rewrote the rules of war. And then, when everything was ready, They launched their first attack. Rax Prime was an industrial world. It built the Dominion's war machines, fueling their conquest of the galaxy. It was untouchable, protected by fleets and planetary shields. No one had ever dared to attack it. Until now. Humanity didn't send a fleet. They didn't announce their arrival. They didn't fight in open combat. Instead, they hacked the planetary defenses. The shields dropped. The alarms never sounded. And before the Dominion could react, human strike teams descended from orbit. They didn't just destroy the factories. They stole the technology. They hijacked Dominion warships. They seized experimental weapons. And before the Dominion reinforcements could arrive, they were gone, vanishing into deep space, leaving nothing but fire and destruction behind. It wasn't just an attack. It was a message. The Dominion had always been the hunter. Now, they were the hunted. Across the galaxy, species that had suffered in silence began to stir. If humans, a species that had barely entered the stars, could strike at the heart of the Dominion, then perhaps the Empire wasn't as invincible as it seemed. Perhaps, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had a chance. And for the first time in his life, Admiral Zor Egzen saw something he had never imagined possible. The beginning of the end. The war had only just begun. And humanity. They were just getting started. The Dominion was silent. Not the kind of silence that followed victory, nor the silence of controlled order. This was a silence born of fear. High Chancellor Vorthos sat in the War Council chamber, staring at the reports in disbelief. The humans had not only attacked Rax Prime, they had crippled it. Their strike had been surgical, precise, and devastating. This was not how primitive species behaved. They were supposed to beg. They were supposed to submit. They were supposed to be crushed beneath the weight of the Dominion's power. Instead, humanity had chosen war. And now, for the first time in Dominion history, the outcome was uncertain. The galaxy had always known how wars were fought. It was a game with rules. Rules that the Dominion had written over the course of centuries. When the Dominion invaded, a species had two choices: surrender and live as subjects, or resist and face extinction. No species had ever won against them. Not once. But humanity was breaking the rules. They weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. They weren't waiting for the Dominion's next move. They were making their own. And the next move would shock the galaxy. Deep within Dominion-controlled space, a fleet of warships patrolled the Xiphos system. It was a vital supply line, linking dozens of occupied worlds to the Dominion's core territories. It was heavily guarded, protected by defense platforms, fighter squadrons, and battle cruisers. No sane enemy would dare attack it. So when the first human distress signal was detected near the system's outer edge, Dominion forces barely took notice. A single crippled human ship drifted in the void, its hull breached, its power flickering. A pathetic sight. Dominion Admiral Korvar smirked as he observed from his flagship. "They have learned their place," he sneered. "Prepare to board and take prisoners." His fleet closed in, and that's when everything went wrong. The crippled ship exploded, not in a fiery blast, but in an electromagnetic surge so powerful it shut down every Dominion ship in range. Shields collapsed, weapons powered down, engines died. For 30 seconds, the Dominion fleet was blind, deaf, and vulnerable. And humanity did not waste a single second. They were already waiting. Out of the darkness, human ships emerged, silent, swift, and merciless. They fired without warning, tearing through disabled Dominion cruisers like predators striking wounded prey. Within minutes, the entire fleet was in chaos. Dominion commanders screamed for backup, but no help came. The humans had jammed all communications. There was no way to call for reinforcements. One by one, Dominion ships were disabled, hijacked, or destroyed. By the time their systems rebooted, it was already over. And when Dominion reinforcements finally arrived, the only thing left of their once powerful fleet was wreckage and silence. Another message had been sent. The Dominion was not safe. Not in their own space. Not anywhere. Humanity had declared war, and they were winning. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. The Dominion had lost another battle, not in an open fight, but through deception, cunning, and ruthless precision. For the first time, the unthinkable was happening. The Dominion wasn't just losing ships. They were losing control. Whispers of rebellion grew louder. Slave worlds that had been silenced for centuries began to rise. Resistance cells that had once hidden in fear now fought in the open. The Dominion's enemies were no longer running. They were fighting back. And the High Chancellor knew exactly who to blame. Humanity. A desperate gamble. The War Council was in chaos. Admirals argued. Generals shouted. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like this. They couldn't predict the humans, couldn't control them, couldn't break them. But High Chancellor Vorthos saw what the others did not. This was not just war. This was something far worse. It was an idea. The idea that the Dominion was not invincible. If that idea spread, it would be the end of everything they had built. The Chancellor stood, his voice silencing the room. "We have underestimated these humans," he admitted. "That was our mistake." He stepped forward, eyes burning with cold determination. "We will not make that mistake again." The room fell into an uneasy silence. "What do you propose?" one of the admirals asked. Vorthos turned to the galactic map, his gaze locked onto a single blue and green planet on the edge of the Dominion's reach. Destroy their homeworld. A hush fell over the chamber. It was forbidden. Even the Dominion had never wiped out an entire species. Conquering them, enslaving them, yes, but eradication, that was a line they had never crossed. But humanity had left them no choice. "Send the extermination fleet," the Chancellor ordered. "Burn Earth to ashes." The admirals hesitated. This was madness. But no one dared to challenge him. Across the chamber, silent confirmations flashed across communication devices. The orders were sent. The largest fleet in Dominion history would soon depart. Not to conquer, not to enslave, but to end the war before it could spread any further. The message was clear. The war ends with Earth's destruction. But what Vorthos didn't know was that humanity already knew they were coming, and they had one final surprise waiting. The fleet moved like a black wave through the void. Hundreds of Dominion warships, each one a fortress of destruction, streaked toward their target, Earth. This was not a battle fleet. This was an extermination force. The humans had broken every rule, defied every order, and humiliated the Dominion at every turn. High Chancellor Vorthos had made his decision. This war would end with fire and ash. As the massive fleet surged forward, Admiral Korvar, commanding the flagship Eternal Wrath, watched in cold satisfaction. "Humanity has chosen its fate," he muttered. "Let this be their final lesson." He believed this would be swift. A single, overwhelming strike. No species had ever survived the full might of the Dominion. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that humanity had already prepared for this moment. And what awaited the Dominion was a nightmare beyond their comprehension. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a bunker hidden from enemy sensors, Supreme Commander Elias Carter stood before a holographic display of the approaching fleet. His officers stood beside him, their faces grim but determined. The Dominion thought Earth would be an easy target. They were wrong. Humanity had known this day would come. The moment the first Dominion ship entered the Sol system, they had started preparing. Not just defenses, but a trap. A final, desperate plan. "Status report," Carter commanded. A young officer turned to him, eyes sharp. "The ARC protocol is active. Civilian evacuation is at 40%. All military installations are in position. And the blackout network. Ready to deploy on your orders, sir." Carter nodded. The blackout network, humanity's most secret weapon. an electromagnetic pulse system unlike anything the Dominion had ever seen. But even that might not be enough. The Dominion's fleet was vast. Even if humanity crippled them, they would still outgun Earth's forces 10-1. This battle would not be won by strength. It would be won by desperation and sheer defiance. The first Dominion ships entered the Sol system, scanning for resistance. At first, there was nothing. No human warships, no planetary defenses. It looked like a ghost system. Admiral Korvar frowned. "Where are their fleets?" he muttered. Then, the traps activated. Suddenly, the space around the Dominion fleet exploded with energy bursts, disrupting their formations. Mines, hidden in the asteroid belt, detonated in synchronized waves. Before they could recover, hundreds of human strike ships emerged from the darkness. Small, fast, deadly. They tore through the Dominion's outer ranks, launching torpedoes at exposed power cores and weapon systems. Korvar roared in frustration. Retaliate. Wipe them out. But humanity wasn't fighting a traditional war. They weren't trying to hold ground. They weren't fighting for victory in a conventional sense. They were bleeding the Dominion dry. Every time the Dominion adjusted their tactics, the humans vanished into the void, only to strike from a different angle. It was chaos. And then, the real trap was sprung. The blackout network activated. A massive electromagnetic surge swept across space, shutting down Dominion communications, jamming targeting systems, and disabling shields. Suddenly, the unstoppable fleet was blind. Human forces struck mercilessly, launching missiles and rail-gun fire at vulnerable targets. Dominion cruisers exploded. Battleships lost control and crashed into each other. The once invincible fleet began to collapse. But the Dominion was not defeated yet. Admiral Korvar, rage burning in his chest, made a final desperate move. He ordered all remaining ships to focus fire on one target, Earth itself. If they could not win, they would burn the planet to cinders. Hundreds of plasma weapons charge, preparing to unleash a planetary extinction strike. Humanity had won the battle, but they were seconds away from losing everything. Commander Elias Carter saw the incoming attack. They couldn't stop it. Even with the Dominion crippled, so many ships still remained, their weapons aimed at Earth. If they fired, humanity would be wiped out. There was only one option left, a desperate final gamble. He turned to his officers, his voice cold and clear. "Activate the last protocol." A hush fell over the room. The last protocol was never meant to be used. It was humanity's final contingency plan, a plan that would ensure victory, but at an unimaginable cost. But now, there was no other choice. Carter stared at the screen, at the countdown to planetary annihilation. This was it, humanity's final stand. And as the Dominion fired their doomsday weapons, Earth responded with one last devastating surprise. Silence fell over the battlefield. For a brief, terrifying moment, time itself seemed to pause. The Dominion fleet, crippled and desperate, had unleashed its final, extinction-level attack, a barrage of plasma weapons, antimatter warheads, and kinetic strikes, all aimed directly at Earth. From the depths of space, thousands of bright lances streaked toward the planet, burning a path through the void. This was not just an attack. This was extermination. Admiral Korvar watched from the shattered remains of his flagship, his mandibles twitching in triumph. "It is done," he whispered. Even if they had lost the battle, humanity would not survive to celebrate. But then, something impossible happened. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, in the hidden military command center, Supreme Commander Elias Carter stood frozen. His people watched the incoming barrage in horror. This was the end. But Carter's eyes remained locked on a single glowing button, the last protocol. No one spoke. No one breathed. The entire room was paralyzed by the weight of what they all knew had to be done. The last protocol was humanity's most secret and dangerous weapon. It was not a shield. It was not a counterattack. It was something far worse. A weapon that would not only destroy the Dominion fleet but rewrite the laws of war forever. Carter exhaled. Then, without hesitation, he pressed the button. And the universe changed. Far above Earth, an invisible energy pulse detonated in space. Not an explosion. Not a wave of destruction. Something more primal. A gravitational anomaly erupted at the heart of the battlefield. A miniature singularity that ripped apart reality itself. The Dominion fleet, already weakened, had no chance. The energy field twisted and collapsed, dragging ships into the abyss like a black hole swallowing stars. Admiral Corvar's last sight was his own warships folding in on themselves, consumed by an inescapable force. His final scream was cut short as his body ceased to exist. The mighty Dominion fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was gone. And in its place was only silence. The war was over. Earth still stood. But the price had been unthinkable. The gravitational surge had disrupted Earth's orbit. The very fabric of space near the planet had been fractured. Entire regions of space were now off-limits, warped beyond recognition. And worse, humanity's use of such a weapon had not gone unnoticed. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched in horror. Humanity had not just survived. They had defied fate itself. And now, for the first time, the galactic powers feared them. Some would come offering alliances. Others would come seeking revenge. But one thing was clear. Humanity had crossed a line. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The silence that followed was unnatural. Across the galaxy, countless civilizations had witnessed the impossible. The mighty Dominion, feared for centuries, had been eradicated in an instant. And humanity. They had survived. But survival had come at a cost. The last protocol had not only destroyed the enemy, it had torn a wound into space itself, a scar in reality that could never truly heal. Now, the universe watched and whispered in fear. Humanity had become something terrifying. And the galaxy would not stand idly by. On a distant world, deep within the heart of the galactic core, a gathering of the most powerful civilizations took place. The High Dominion was no more, but that did not mean humanity was safe. In the great chamber of the Celestial Assembly, leaders from 100 species sat in eerie silence. The room, carved from black stone older than most of their civilizations, had not seen such an urgent meeting in millennia. Finally, the Archon of the Velith, a towering figure with obsidian skin and burning white eyes, spoke. "They used a forbidden weapon," he said, his voice like grinding metal. "They have defied the natural order." A chittering voice followed, belonging to the Inari Hive Queen. "Their power is unstable. Their species is reckless. They must be contained." The voices of agreement came like a storm. Humanity had gone too far. And if they were not stopped now, there might never be another chance. It was not a question of justice. It was a question of survival. Back on Earth, the celebrations had been brief. The victory was undeniable. But everyone knew what was coming. Humanity had crossed a threshold that no civilization was meant to cross. They had proven that they were not prey. But the rest of the galaxy, they would not accept this. Commander Elias Carter stood in the war room, surrounded by his top strategists. Holograms flickered, displaying intercepted transmissions from across the stars. A coalition was forming. Hundreds of species, thousands of warships. This was no longer just about vengeance for the Dominion. This was about ensuring humanity never had the chance to strike again. The largest fleet in galactic history was assembling, and it was coming straight for Earth. The room was heavy with tension. But Carter, he smiled, because humanity still had one last move left, hidden beneath the icy surface of Europa, buried deep within Mars, cloaked in the swirling storms of Jupiter's great red spot. Humanity's true power had yet to be revealed. For decades, long before first contact, Earth's brightest minds had prepared for the worst. The Dominion had believed they were attacking a weak, primitive species. They had never realized that humanity had already been preparing for war among the stars. Now, the secret fleets stirred. Automated defense systems roared to life. Weapons of terrifying power unshackled. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. But humanity was ready. And this time, they would not just survive. They would conquer.